Well, dear students, welcome to this class. Today we are going to discuss a very interesting topic that will enable you to understand the basic mechanism behind the working of mammalian endocrine system and the mammalian reproduction. The topic is hypothalamus adenohypophysis gonadal axis. That means we have to understand an axis connecting three important endocrine glands which regulate the reproductive functions of a mammal. So what are these three important endocrine glands? These are the hypothalamus, the adenohypophysis or the pituitary gland, and or the anterior pituitary gland, and finally the male and female gonads. Now, the learning objective behind this topic are three. You need to have the clear-cut understanding about three important concepts once the topic is complete. Number one objective is you should understand how is hypothalamus connected with the anterior pituitary gland to exert its influence on the working of anterior pituitary gland. Number second, how is nervous system exerting influence on the gonadotropic secretions of the pituitary gland. That means how are the neurosecretions from hypothalamus responsible for regulating the secretion of gonadotropins from the pituitary. And finally the third objective is how is the synthesis of gonadotropins from the pituitary gland and the sex steroids synthesis from the gonads regulated. These are the objectives for today's topic. And before starting the topic, let me tell you this is a bit lengthy topic, so we shall be completing it in two different sessions. Today, I will be telling you about the number one component of this hypothalamo-pituitary axis, that is the hypothalamus. And before discussing the hypothalamus, let me try to recall that what you have studied till now about the mammalian, these reproductive glands and their secretions. From the previous lectures, you have learnt that male sex hormones like the testosterone and the female sex hormone like the estrogens, they are the substances that promote the development and functions of male and female reproductive system. As you know, estrogens stimulate the maturation and functioning of the female genital structures, while as the testosterone regulates the maturation and functioning of the male genital structures or the male reproductive system. And then you also came to know the nature of these gonadal hormones and the mechanism of their action. And also let us recall that the gonadal hormonal production in males and the females from the testes and the ovaries. It is regulated by the anterior pituitary hormones called as luteinizing hormone and the follicular stimulating hormone, which in turn are also regulated by gonadotropin releasing hormones secreted by the hypothalamus. So today basically we are going to understand this triangle of tissues and cells. That is the hypothalamus part, that is the anterior pituitary part, and finally the gonadal part, so as to understand their mutual control on one another on a single axis, so that we finally understand how the hypothalamus adenohypophysis gonadal axis is finally responsible for the endocrine regulation of mammalian gonadal function. So as far as the hypothalamus is concerned and its neurohormonal secretions are concerned, first let us see what is the hypothalamus, where it is present. The hypothalamus basically forms the floor and the lower walls of our brain, containing the specialized nuclei which we called as supraoptic and paraventricular nuclei. This supraoptic and paraventricular nuclei, you will understand when I will be providing you the material, I have certain diagrams there. You can have the idea about the physical location of these particular nuclei. And as far as this diagram is concerned, which you are having which you are having look at this time, this is simply a chart to make you understand how the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and the gonads are interconnected, and you see how they are regulated through a feedback mechanism. So I was telling you about the supraoptic and paraventricular nuclei of the hypothalamus, and these are basically clustered in several pairs, जिनको हम बेसिकली बोलते हैं हाइपोफिजियोट्रॉपिक एरिया ऑफ द हाइपोथैलेमस, और तकरीबन 1000 से 3000 न्यूरॉन्स इस कॉम्प्लेक्स में होते हैं, एंड दे आर ऑलवेज एक्टिव, बिजी इन सिक्रेटिंग द गोनेडोट्रोपिन रिलीजिंग हार्मोन, राइट? And once they secrete these gonadotropin releasing hormone, the main purpose of these is to reach the anterior pituitary to regulate the secretion of FSH and LH. So for that purpose, they need to travel from the hypothalamus, from these nuclear centers to the anterior pituitary, and for this thing to manifest, basically they have to cross certain networks of arteries, जिनको हम बोलते हैं basically primary capillary plexus as well as the secondary capillary plexus. So it is the interconnection between this primary capillary plexus and the secondary capillary plexus that these gonadotropin releasing hormones, they travel to this primary and secondary stalk, and ultimately they reach the anterior pituitary gland, जहाँ पर एक स्पेशल रीजन होता है जहाँ पर ये पहुँच के फिर दे स्टार्ट रेगुलेटिंग और दे एक्टिवेट द gonadotropes. What are gonadotropes? These are the special cells present in the anterior pituitary gland whose role is to synthesize the gonadotropin releasing hormones, जिसको हम बोलते हैं कि दिस द मास्टर हार्मोन. क्या है मास्टर हार्मोन? gonadotropin releasing hormone, because it regulates the secretion of luteinizing hormone as well as the follicular stimulating hormone, which later on regulate the synthesis of what? The gonadal hormones in males and the females. Very good. Thus, basically, we have to understand here that is the vascular system which connects the hypothalamus basal stalk with the anterior pituitary. और इस stalk portal system को हम बोलते हैं basically hypophyseal portal system, and it allows basically the gonadotropin releasing hormones, which are the neurosecretions, to reach from the hypothalamus to the anterior pituitary gland through a network of small arteries and veins. तो दूसरा नाम भी जो हम देते हैं that is again this hypophyseal portal system or hypophyseal portal veins. And once the hormones of the anterior pituitary are now secreted, they have to now leave the anterior pituitary gland, and they need to be carried to the gonads through the blood circulation, and the gonads will then later on respond to the presence of these pituitary hormones in their vicinity by accordingly secreting the required gonadal hormones as and when the need arises. And at the same time, then these gonadal hormones like the testosterone in case of males and the estrogen and progesterone in case of females, they have the ability of regulating the production of both these types of important endocrine, that is called as gonadotropin releasing hormone from the hypothalamus. That means testosterone and the estrogen can regulate its synthesis. That means they can say to hypothalamus when we are in need of the gonadotropin releasing hormone, and at the same time they can also tell the pituitary gland when you are supposed to release the luteinizing hormone and the follicular stimulating hormone for immediate functioning in the body. So in today's overview, we have only dealt with the hypothalamus part of the hypothalamo-pituitary axis, and in the next lecture we will deliberate upon the role of the anterior pituitary gland and how are the gonadotropin releasing hormones secreted in response to the gonadotropin releasing hormones from the hypothalamus, and how then these what is called as FSH and LHH get released from the anterior pituitary gland. They reach through the blood circulation to the respective gonads in case of males and females, and ultimately the gonads will respond by secreting testosterone or the estrogen, as the case may be, to complete this working of this hypothalamus, the anterior pituitary and the gonads on a single axis. जो अभी हमने उसका पहला पार्ट पढ़ा, दैट इज कॉल्ड एज द हाइपोथैलेमस पार्ट, और इस एक्सिस को हम जो बोलते हैं उसको हम HPG एक्सिस के नाम से भी जानते हैं। और इसी से हमें अंडरस्टैंड हो जाता है कि कैसे तीन इंडिविजुअल एंडोक्राइन ग्लैंड्स दे लुक लाइक ए सिंगल सिस्टम, ए सिंगल एंटिटी to regulate the reproductive functions of an individual male and female in case of mammals. So I will be providing you the study material for it also. Read that, comprehend that, try to clear the concepts, and wherever you will find the difficulty, you can ask for the clarifications for the concept clearance.